Podcast. I'm Gavin Schall, and today I'm joined by DJ Zullo of Knicks Film School to discuss the adjustments that will give the Knicks a chance to win Game 5 and extend the series against the Miami Heat.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and I wanted to remind you that you can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because if you do, that would make you an everydayer. And we love our everydayers here at Locked On Knicks. And if you are an everydayer, to ensure that you continue to be, you can throw us a subscription on YouTube and hit that notifications bell so you never ever miss an episode. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by the fantastic DJ Zullo, contributor at Knicks Film School. You can also check out his work on the Craft NBA YouTube channel. And DJ and I are going to get into some adjustments the Knicks need to make in Game 5. His thoughts on Julius Randle's less than stellar performance, grading Tom Thibodeau as a coach, and DJ's biggest gripes with what he's done. And finally, some positives heading into Game 5 and potentially, if things go bad, the offseason. Without further ado, let's get into it right now on Locked On Knicks. All right, guys, as promised, we are joined by one of my favorite people to have on this podcast, the fantastic DJ Zullo, a contributor over at Knicks Film School, making film threads for them and contributing to the excellent Knicks Film School podcast. And you can also check out DJ on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/@CraftNBA, or just search Craft NBA for individual player breakdowns. DJ, welcome to the show. How are you doing? Are you mourning? Are you hopeful? Are you contemplative? Like what's the emotional state right now in regards to the New York Knicks?
Yeah, I guess I'm better than last night. Trying to digest things, not in the sense that I feel better about where the team is, but I feel like I've had some therapy to get the thoughts out and the kind of the emotions out. Now it's about just trying to figure out what went wrong, what could go right for Game 5, and if there's still some life left in this team, which I'm still trying to figure out. So hopefully we can come to some conclusions before we wrap up today.
Yeah, we've talked about it a bit on the pod already, right? But it's so easy to say, oh, it's house money. Like, who would have thought we'd upset the Cavs, like by a lot of advanced metrics, one of the best teams in the NBA. We did it in 5 games. What a crowning achievement for this team. It's all gravy now. And then you see that it's the Miami Heat. You see it's a team you beat 3 and 4 times in the regular season. That was, I think, what was the 20th in the NBA in net rating, 29th in the NBA in offensive rating. You say, on paper, we probably should beat this team. Mm-hmm. You talk yourself into it, and you get heartbroken. Welcome to life as a Knicks fan, DJ. But let's start here, because Tom Thibodeau has taken a lot of criticism the last 24 hours, including on this podcast. But I wanted a more objective perspective than my own. I wanted like one of the most informed perspectives I can get, because I know you really, really study the film and you're not afraid to have opinions counter to everyone else. How do you think he has done this series?
I don't think he's had a good series at all. I don't think if I had to rank the issues with this team, I don't know where the coaching sort of comparison would rank. I mean, it would have to be pretty high, because I think Spoelstra's been that good. And I think there's been a few things that I have questions with regarding Thibodeau. We obviously, the heart for Grimes was an unforced error. Everyone was calling for it. He finally makes the change before Game 4. Whether or not that's a little, too little, too late. And then there's other things. Like I feel like he has defended Jimmy Butler in a way that has been panicky. I feel like there's been way too many doubles thrown his way. I think it's really compromised the defense. I just don't. There's been a few things with with Jalen Brunson that I feel like he's not necessarily helping him. One being, I don't necessarily love the idea of putting him on Strus. I didn't love the idea of him on LeVert in the first series. Even though Garland was a tough matchup, I really advocated for that after Game 2. He made the switch, so I was happy for that. I just think it keeps the stability of your defense intact. And then I just think that he needs to go Brunson, put him on Vincent. I don't think that Vincent is a guy that's going to necessarily smoke Brunson all game. And I feel like he just keeps your cross matching in order. And I feel like Strus is just with this high release point. I looked up his numbers before we came on, and he's 12 of 23 against Brunson. Strus is, with Brunson being the closest defender. It's pretty efficient numbers. He's had a good series. I think, Brunson at 6'1", he just can't get up there and contest his shots well enough. And then like little things, like there was times where the full court pressure, the one man full court pressure last night was really getting to Brunson, and it just took Tibbs a little too long to adjust. He got RJ the ball on one occasion where RJ turned it over, and then on the next play, RJ actually got it up down the court, got a lob to Mitch, so it ended up working out in that case. But little things, like he ended up getting Randle the ball to bring up in the second half a little more, but I feel like he was a little too slow on the trigger in that regard. Just, it's hard not to compare him to the guy he's coaching against, but it's just been such a stark difference in terms of where Miami is in the coaching realm and where the Knicks are. So it hasn't been a good series for Tibbs. Part of that is he's going up against arguably the best in the NBA right now, and that's just tough for any coach to deal with.
Yeah, I think the part that's hard to measure for me is how much can you put on Tom Thibodeau, the amount of mistakes that the Knicks and unforced errors the Knicks have on a game-to-game basis versus Miami, who I'm sure they have them, and I'm sure there's a bias when I'm watching that I notice when it happens to the Knicks, and when it happens for Miami, I'm just like, oh, it's a great play, and I don't really register it, but I think it's impossible not to see that Miami is the more composed team, the more decisive team, and has just a fundamentally better understanding of their defensive assignments than the Knicks do, where there have constantly been errors on that side of the floor. And granted, part of that has to be the fact that Miami has older players, guys who have about as much playoff experience as any team in the NBA, this side of Golden State, and maybe some of the guys on the Celtics. That's certainly part of it, but I think Tibbs has to bear at least a bit of the brunt for that, particularly the confusion defensively, which I thought got better this game because it felt like they just said, all right, we're going to switch everything. And that led to some issues where Bam had guards on him. And to your point, that didn't really help the frenetic nature of the Knicks defense, where it felt like constantly like they were flying around to put out fires. And that's kind of been the call from game one. But I want to circle back to what you said on Jimmy Butler, because that was a big complaint of mine coming out of game three. And I saw John Jablanca, who does a really great job covering the Miami Heat. You can follow him on Twitter at John Jablanca _. And he tweeted out this video that was like all the times the Knicks double team Butler in game three. And the Miami objectively didn't get a lot out of it. It was like, all right, you know what? That wasn't as bad as I thought. But then watching back today, just in the first quarter, I saw 4-ish open threes they got on plays when the Knicks double Jimmy Butler. What did you see? And I know you said that was an issue for you.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't think Butler has proven yet. And I don't know if it's the ankle not being 100%. I don't think he's proven to be the guy that he was against Milwaukee, where he was on a level where you had no other choice but to send doubles. And obviously the big issue there was Budenholzer never did. And that was partly why he doesn't have a job anymore. But I feel like Butler hasn't necessarily proven it to me or anyone watching objectively that he is the guy that you need to treat in that manner. I don't think the Knicks have shut down defenders like some of the best in the league, but I feel confident enough in Hart, Grimes, and when RJ gets matched up on him that they're going to do enough to where he's not going to go off for 45, 50 points. You're going to keep him relatively, in check. He's going to get his points because he's arguably at his position. There's not a lot of guys better at just drawing fouls and being savvy and getting the whistle. He must be averaging close to 10 free throws a game in this series. So he's going to get his points based on that. But in terms of him shooting the ball and taking those mid-range shots that he loves, I much rather that be the outcome versus a swing than you're left with a Strus or a Duncan Robinson or a Vincent wide open 3-pointer. Because I think that it just destabilizes your team to the point where all those rotations that the Knicks have struggled with, they come more into play when your defense is primarily going to double and focus on Jimmy Butler primarily as the guy that you need to shut down, which I get the concept of it, but I also don't know if the Knicks have the guys on their roster right now that you can trust to make these rotations in a stable manner. That's not going to just disrupt your defense to the point where you have offensive rebounding issues. You have obviously wide open 3 issues. So it just kind of creates more problems than I think you're trying to solve.
All right, guys, when we come back with DJ, we're going to dive deeper on some of the adjustments that the Knicks need to make, and then tell you what's been special about Jalen Brunson's performance this postseason. But first, if you're like me and you're kind of thinking, all right, this might game 5, obviously the situation's a little bit of a bummer, but it might be an opportunity to get an MSG a little bit cheaper than usual. Well, there's only one place to go, and that's Gametime. Is buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful, and Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and your set and tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Yeah, I'm with you 100%, and I think losing Emmanuel quickly, like, to me, made that, and him not being a guy that's automatically on the floor for 30 minutes in this series made that even less palatable, because he is about as good as anyone in the NBA at playing on a string like that and prioritizing where he's supposed to go and directing other guys where to go.
Right.
And Fred Katz wrote a really great article about it earlier this year. And when you lose that, like for however bad he is offensively, like he's a key piece in doing that. And that makes it all the more complicated. Honestly, like, I didn't think the Knicks did a terrible job, like certainly for long stretches in yesterday's game, of playing on a string, but like at a certain point, like there's only so much you could do. Like there was a play, I referenced it on last night's pod, where like early fourth quarter, where Grimes is like top of the key early in the shot clock, shading towards Jimmy Butler. And I think there's one thing to do it when there's 6 or 7 seconds left in the shot clock and you have him in a corner. Like Miami can only get so much out of that because there's a time limit on it. But when it's early shot clock and when he's center court and he has like a full visual, and you're having Grimes shade way off of Kyle Lowry, who's a fantastic three-point shooter, and Grimes has to sprint out on him, like, of course he's going to bite on that pump fake, and of course Lowry's going to hit the open three.
So that play was, so Lowry was one pass away?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was right up. He was right. It was helping. Right. It was treating it like how the Knicks treated Isaac Okoro.
Got it. Which that's if you're going to play a shell defense, you can play off a guy if he's 2 passes away, or you're forcing a pass from one side to the next. But if he's 1 pass away, like you're suggesting there, you can't play off in that manner, because Lowry's too good a shooter and he's savvy enough to where if you're going to close out hard on him, he can get something going downhill. So I agree. And I
guess, like, I think it's hard for me to tell sometimes, like, was that Grimes audibling and like panicking about Jimmy Butler, or was that Tibbs? But it just feels like it's happened too often throughout this series for it to just be Tibbs. All right. Let's talk maybe some positives. Maybe these aren't positives, but I guess just in saying what Tibbs did wrong, you already highlighted some of them, but what are adjustments that the Knicks can make going into this game 5 to have an opportunity to get back to Miami for game 6?
Yeah. So I think I talked about a couple of them. I mean, I think I don't love the Brunson on Strus matchup. I think it's just not untenable. I think that Brunson is expending so much energy sprinting around screens, trying to chase a guy that has, give credit to the Strus. He will fly around at his size, 6'7". It's a rare skill to be that big and to have the motor he has when he's playing. And it's asking a lot of Brunson, who I think his best attribute is actually point of attack defense and sort of getting around screens at the top of the key. But when you're asking him to go side to side and eluding multiple screens on a single play, I think it's a lot to ask. So I think it's a simple change. And then what you really just need to do, if Quickly's not playing and he's doubtful at this point, per the Knicks, to play in game 5, you have to stagger the Brunson Randle minutes to where you can't start the second quarter with the lineup that the Knicks had with McBride, Hart, Robinson, Toppin, and I think RJ was in that lineup. He didn't start in that lineup, but he came in pretty quick. So, but I just think you need Brunson or Randle in the game for the entire duration of the basketball game, because in that second quarter to lose the minutes that Butler and Bam were not on the floor was a big missed opportunity there, and they just couldn't score enough. So you have to figure out a way to keep your 2 best options right now on the floor at all times. So if that means staggering, bringing a guy out early in the game, so you have one at all times on the floor, I think that's a big thing. And then you just need to rest guys in the second half. I get you didn't trust Toppin. Frankly, he hasn't really, I don't have much trust in him at this point. McBride, as much as I love him, I don't know if he's ready offensively to participate in a series of this magnitude for long stretches. So I get you have to play your guys 40-ish minutes, your top guys, but I think you need to spell them a little bit in the second half, because while there were some strategic issues that caused all those offensive rebounds down the stretch, I think a lot of it or at least part of it was just due to the fact that they didn't really rest and they were just doggedly fatigued. And I think you have to figure out a way to manage the minutes a little better. So hopefully in game 5, they get out to a little bit of a lead. So you're not playing catch up the entire game, but that's a few things that I would do just in terms of the substitution patterns and try to give your team a better chance.
Yeah. And I think you can expect more from Josh Hart coming back home. I mean, he said himself, like didn't necessarily have his typical energy though. I think not like when he's coming off the bench, not having quickly like really impacts his game and the amount of room he has to operate. It's kind of the same issue you had with the starters. Watching Obi 6 minutes back, like I couldn't blame Tibbs for not putting him back in the game. Like I didn't even realize this watching it live, but like on one of those disastrous, like early offensive rebounds, like there was a play
where you were leaked out.
Yeah, where he leaked out. Where RJ like had like kind of had the ball, but there were 2 guys around him, and then Highsmith just got the layup. And just I mean that's inexcusable. And like obviously,
I love the fact that he does that, but he didn't time it well. Like you said, Highsmith was right under the basket. That was his box out. That was his assignment.
Yeah,
those are the type of plays where if you're in the playoffs, you can't afford those. You just can't. It was a bad play. So yeah, I remember seeing that one on rewatch and just kind of like jaw dropping a little bit because you think you're beyond the point where you're going to have an error of that magnitude, and that speaks to what you were talking about earlier, the Heat just being more poised and just more. Just a headier team in some respects, and they're not going to pull off a play in that way that it just corrupts your defense in that manner.
Yeah, and he had 2 nice buckets when he was in, but it's just not good enough. And obviously that is a big issue when you have Julius Randle in the state that he's currently in. Tibbs was able to buy some minutes for like I guess it was a total of like 3 where like neither Randle or Obi were on the floor, but Randle still ends up playing 39 minutes, 20 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. We choreographed, or that's not the right word, but we summarized like his moments of just jogging back. Where are you at on that? Because like a day later, like I want to just fall back on like the guys like clearly hurt and watching him play. Like obviously he's not pushing off 100%. He had a play where like Kevin Love just blew by him off the dribble, and I almost don't care like how poor his positioning is or how lazy he is on a given day. Like that just doesn't really happen to Julius normally. Like he's generally like an excellent one-on-one defender. And like, I guess like it's hard for me to separate that and like give some forgiveness for that and some empathy for that with the fact that like, all right, but like you're running on offense, but then you can't run back or at least like hobble back. Like when you turn it over midcourt and you're just like getting mad at the world. That's kind of what's been tough for me.
Yeah. It looks bad. I don't know. And it felt like a little piling on last night and into today, but I don't know. Yeah. We were all seeing the same thing, and that's kind of the issue, right? I felt like last year was all about, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There's obviously some things mentally that he had to overcome. So you come into this year and it all, as he performed much better and his ability to just recognize the fact that last year was not good for him on the mental side of things, and obviously the on-court stuff, but the mental side of things were a problem. He addressed it, and it seemed like he had sort of gotten past it. And then, we had that game later in the year in LA where he against the Clippers, where he sort of like lost it a little bit. And that was kind of the first sign that, all right, are the sort of the issues starting to rear their head? And then the playoffs come, and, he didn't play well against Cleveland. He had the injury. I thought he was fantastic at game 5 against Cleveland in that first half. I thought he was as good as I'd seen him in a long time. So I want, those sliding doors moment there where if he doesn't turn his ankle again, does he take that momentum throughout that game and then into the series? I guess we'll never know, but it just, I tend to not have as much, sympathy for what he's dealing with in terms of a potential injury, because I'm just not seeing necessarily that to the point where it's affecting him on the offensive side of things. That one play where Grimes had the turnover, it was in the first few minutes of the game. Yeah. Randle didn't get back. He threw his arms up. It was clearly not interested in getting back on defense. And that to me is not based on an ankle injury or the fact that his minute load is heavy. It was right out of the gate. And then you mentioned the blow by Kevin Love. It was a closeout that was just, poor technique. He had another one in the second half, just again, poor technique where he's not in a stance.
Cody Martin, right?
against Cody Martin. Kayla Martin, or is it Cody?
I get it. I've mixed it up about 5 times.
I think it's Kayla, but anyway, in any case, yeah, terrible. And actually, I think Jim Jackson actually called him out on that play. Yeah. Jim Jackson actually called him out on that play for the techniques, and then he goes, it's not something you're necessarily going to teach, because he was upright. He wasn't in any kind of a stance. So these are the things where I agree with you. He's usually pretty good when he's ISO'd against someone. He can kind of dig down and it's a challenge. But just his effort level has been embarrassing at times. And, it's confounding, because I think if we look back at the Tibbs tenure, I wonder if him and his handling of Julius when he's having these moments is going to be the thing we look back on as like a missed opportunity, because when you let it go basically all of last season, then how do you necessarily address it now in a situation where you can't afford to lose him? You've never really given him that sort of discipline in a way that's where you're going to hold him accountable. So I think you just have to ride it out. I think you have to hope that his shot making, I thought was pretty good yesterday. His offensively didn't have a ton of issues with how he played. You hope that he carries it over into game 5. But all the other stuff is that's just part of the package, and you have to manage it. And, we can talk at a later time regarding, what does this mean long-term for the team and his fit and where he should be on the pecking order. But it's disappointing. I actually felt bad in a way, because it got so vitriolic on social media, but it's part of it. Just, he's brought this on himself. And he's got to do better. That's just is what it is. And I don't have a ton of confidence that he's necessarily going to bring that sort of effort. I just hope that he can be a really good offensive player, and the Knicks can pull out a game coming up here at MSG.
Yeah, and I think the frustrating part is like you can't help but feel like what's going through his mind right now is like, screw all of you. Like I'm fighting through an injury. Like I'm in pain every single play. I'm doing my best, saving my energy when I need to. And some part of me like says like, yeah, that's fair. And then but then the other part of me like just keeps coming back to like the effect that I got to assume that has on his teammates. And like credit to like everyone else in the Knicks, because going back to last year, going back to like, well, I don't even want to think about 4 years ago, but going back to last year, like these guys don't show it, right? Like you never see players yell at him. But maybe part of that is just that's a bad thing that they're not comfortable doing that, because like Tibbs obviously his favorites. And like if someone else not named Jalen Brunson would never do that, or Julius Randle did that, probably out of the game and on the bench. But let's move on to a positive before we send you on your way. I don't want to. I was almost reticent to ask this question, because it feels like, all right, like I'm just assuming like the series is over, the Knicks are going to lose, and even if that's probably the case, I don't want to bury them just yet, even if me and Alex did a little bit last night. But that being said, I probably won't get to talk to you while the series is still going on, at least on air. So what's something positive you've taken away from this series that if we are nearing our demise as a 2022, 2023 franchise, what are you taking to this offseason? Like, all right, that was something that like getting that opportunity on a huge stage, like we know about this team, is going to carry forward.
Sure. So I'll give you 2. One, I think RJ's performance since game 2 of Cleveland has been really good. And I think that I was concerned a little bit after game 3, because I thought, all right, Miami's now going to a straight up man-to-man defensive concept. They're not giving him those runways that he had in game 2. How is he going to perform? He didn't have a great game, obviously, in game 3, but I thought he came back last night and just played really well. And I think he seems more explosive. He seems more, obviously his passing has taken a huge leap. So I just feel like for the first time, I can pretty confidently say that he's a guy that you can have on a roster, and he could be your 3rd best player on a really good team. And that was not something I was thinking a month ago, 2 months ago, to be completely honest. So that's one. And then I think Jalen Brunson has to be the other one, because, he's averaging 25 points a game. Other than his 3-point shooting, everything else has been carried over from the regular season. He's obviously hurt. He obviously doesn't have a ton of space to operate, especially in that starting lineup, especially with Josh Hart playing with RJ Barrett. Doesn't have a ton of space, and has performed really well against 2 defenses that have keyed in on him, with multiple defenders, good defenders primarily. So for him to go out and have a second straight playoff series, season really, based on last year's performance with Dallas, and really perform at a high level again, he's just a guy. He's a star, and I feel like there's still a little room to grow if this team can figure out a a situation where he does have more space to operate, and he has a little more coverage on the defensive end because he is it's a problem defensively to sort of hide him. But if you have better defenders, then that problem can be mitigated a little bit. But the fact that he's having his second straight season where he is a big time shot maker in the playoffs just gives me a lot of hope that this is just who he is. And he's just a piece you can just plug in for the next 3-4 years and know every time this team's in the playoffs that he's going to be a relatively efficient playoff scorer at multiple levels. And that's just it's a very important thing to sort of have in your back pocket every time you go and you're matching up in a playoff series. You know that you're going to get 25 to 26 points from Jalen Brunson. He's going to do it in a pretty efficient manner. And he's just a tough guy that's, as I mentioned, obviously hurt. And to do it in that, still do it in that way, the way he's doing it has been really, really impressive. So I think those are the two guys that just really impressed with. And then, I'll just kind of wrap it up with Hartenstein, where I don't think he's been necessarily great in this Miami series. I just feel like he's just a solid piece going forward and has really helped the Knicks in multiple games. Tough guy, gives the Knicks some roster flexibility if there is some trades down the line, if you have basically a starting caliber center as your backup. So yeah, I mean, it hasn't been all bad. It's 3-1. I would probably give them at least a 50-50 shot to win game 5. Yeah. And then you have the hope that you could put the fear of God into Miami in the fourth quarter of a tight game 6 and have the specter of MSG game 7 in the rearview mirror, or in the in their minds, this sort of like worry about. So not all is lost. There's been some positives, but obviously if they lose the series in 5 games, it can't help but be disappointed. But there's gonna be positives going into this offseason, regardless of what happens in this game 5. Young team, a lot of growth this year. So I don't necessarily think that it's all doom and gloom. I actually feel kind of good where the team is right now, and we'll see how. I think they're gonna fight game 5. I don't know if they're gonna have the shot makers to pull it out, but they'll be in the game. I don't think the Heat are necessarily going to do what the Atlanta did 2 years ago and just sort of like put the hammer down and the Knicks are going to whittle away. I think it'll be a competitive game, and I think the Knicks have a pretty good shot of pulling it out.
Yeah, I think so too. And we said as much last night. I'm just going to add on Jalen Brunson real quick. I was just going over his cleaning the glass numbers. And I think maybe the most impressive thing to me is that his rim volume has like totally dissipated. Like he went in the regular season, like 29.6% of his shots came at the rim. That was 74th percentile in the NBA. And he was obviously super efficient when he was there. And then in the playoffs, that has like pretty much disappeared. He's in the 20th percentile and only 14% of his shots. So like half as many shots at the rim as he had in the regular season. But because he's like absolutely elite as a mid-range scorer, 93rd percentile in the playoffs, 57% finisher at the rim, 60th percentile overall on effective field goal percentage, despite, to your point, only shooting 29% from 3, which I think has a lot to do with the ankle injury. I think the rim stuff also has a lot to do with the ankle injury. We heard the reports. I think it's from Ian Begley today, or I'm sorry if I'm misattributing that, but like Miami guys didn't even expect Jalen to play in game 2 because he was so beat up. Like the dude is just an absolute warrior. And like, I'm with you on him and RJ being the top 2 guys, because like having a bona fide number 1 scorer in the playoffs, like the Knicks haven't had that since Melo, and Brunson obviously brings some stuff to the table. Like he's not the overall weapon that Melo is, but stuff that Melo like couldn't quite dream of as a player. And as I don't want to say as a leader to take a shot, but like he is special in that category. And RJ, like to me, like the only thing I'm looking at going forward is if the 3-point shooting proves to be real next season, because that is still like, it's always going to be make or break with him, but his ability to just like a couple times beat Jimmy Butler from a standstill. Like I know Butler might not be 100% healthy, might not be able to push off that ankle quite as well as he typically would, but given what happened in game 4 and then RJ's ability to do that, in game 3, and then RJ's ability to shift that in game 4, that was really exciting to me.
Yeah, that was one with the right hand going baseline. Typically, the explosion with that right hand has always been the thing that he's to me been a little bit lacking, but he really has some good explosion. That he's always had a good first step for his size. He's using it now, and I feel pretty good about him being an average shooter. And if all the other things, the passing has been the big thing. I mean, if he can just continue if that carries over, then even if he's not like a knockdown shooter, there's enough there as an offensive player that he's going to be really good. And you see, I forget this too. He's still hasn't turned 23, or he's about to turn 23.
Yeah, about to turn 23.
Yeah, so he's a lot of room to grow. So he's been fun to watch, especially after last year's 2 years ago, the way his postseason went and the first 2 games of Cleveland. So to turn it around, I mean, kudos to him. Mentally, he's always been pretty tough. So I shouldn't be too shocked.
Yeah, and I think there are ways the Knicks can retrofit their roster, particularly if Julius Randle was moved, that might empower RJ to be something that we haven't even really contemplated yet. But that is a conversation for another day. Right now, we're going to see tonight if they can take Game 5. But DJ, before I let you go, can you just tell everyone one final time where they can find all your great work?
Thank you. Yeah, Ace underscore Zullo, ACE underscore ZULLO at Twitter. And then if you search the Craft NBA on in YouTube, I do some videos there. Haven't been so it's been busy with the Knicks, quite frankly. I've only gotten like 1 video out recently, but I'm hoping to do more. Some new stuff coming out down the pike too as well. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Always appreciate talking this stuff through with you, Gavin. And you always do a great work at your end. Big fan of the show, and just keep up the good work, man.
Thank you so much, man. And thank you to everyone who listened. We'll talk to you maybe when the Knicks season is over, maybe when it has new hope. I don't know yet. We'll find out tonight on Locked On Knicks.